excuse for anyone not to vote in the state of New Jersey if you're eligible to do so. I have an idea, Mr. Speaker. I think we could get together.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I think there's something we can agree on, what they call in politics an 80-20 issue, and it's voter ID. 80% of people favor voter ID where 20% don't. Let me help you. I have an amendment here, Mr. Speaker. I think we could all celebrate, and then I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, then we just stop and get out of here. If we could all agree that voter ID and amend this bill, I think it would be a really good way to show unity to our state at a time when there seems to be so much disagreement.
The New Jersey Statehouse Watch is on. From Trenton, we explain what's happening inside the Statehouse, speaking directly with legislators, policymakers, and budget experts to bring you the facts behind the decisions.
There's no doubt that energy bills are about to skyrocket this summer.
$300 million to Newark billionaires, that ain't cutting it for rural New Jersey. Enough of it.
Madam Clerk, please on the machine for a vote.
Received 46 votes in the affirmative, 25 in the negative, and 0 abstention.
We break down bills as they move through the New Jersey legislature before they become law. With your hosts, Jack Brangan and Constance Ditzel. So stick around. Here's Jack and Connie.
So good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Jack Brangan, and I am here with Constance Ditzel.
Good evening.
Constance, how are you doing tonight?
I am great.
Okay. So,
beautiful day, you can't complain.
Yeah, so you are here at the New Jersey Statehouse Watch podcast, and we are on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, and the purpose of our podcast is very specific. All we do is keep an eye on Trenton and all the bills going through the State House in Trenton. So tonight we have Vicky Flynn from, she's an assemblywoman from Legislative District 13, and we'll bring her on in a few minutes. But what we'd like to do first is just review what we have been doing the last couple of weeks, last couple of podcasts, and what's been going on in Trenton. In case you missed it while you were busy working, New Jersey has become a sanctuary state. And it has been a sanctuary state of sorts until since 2018. But since Mikey Sherrill became governor, the Democrats have really nailed it down very tight as far as being a sanctuary state. Because what they did was they added on a couple more bills. One was called the Data Privacy Act. Now, this is in addition to what was there already, but the Data Privacy Act, you might think the Jersey taxpayer that this bill would keep your data private, but this is not what this bill does at all. What this bill does is keep the data private of illegal aliens. So what does that mean? That means if your local police force happens to see a fugitive that ICE is looking for and it's picked up by the automobile license plate reader, it will now be against the law for your local police force to give ICE a heads up. So that data no longer will be shared, where prior to this law, that data was shared. And that's vitally important because if you remember after 9/11, the main criticism was that the police agencies, law enforcement agencies, did not share data. So since then, there has been a concerted effort to share that data until you get to New Jersey and the sanctuary state. So Democrats have pulled that back. The second one, by the way, if the data was shared by mistake, that perpetrator can sue the state now. So they added that into the law that they can sue the state of New Jersey. So in addition to being a sanctuary state, the other thing is the Department of Health has pulled away from the CDC. For 70 years, almost 70 years, New Jersey has followed the CDC in terms of immunization. Mikey Sherrill is thinking better. She thinks she knows better than the CDC, and they have moved away from the CDC for immunization. So your family, your children's immunization schedule now will be controlled by the New Jersey Department of Health, which, by the way, if you compare it to the CDC, which has 70,000 people, the Department of Health here in New Jersey has 5,000. The CDC has probably some of the smartest people in the world. I'm sure the ones in the Department of Health are very good. But the CDC has doctors that are doing groundbreaking research. The other thing that has happened is there's a bill that we're going to talk about a little bit towards the end called the John Lewis voter bill. Now, you think you might understand how voting works with the mail-in ballots and everything. Well, all this is going out the window. Everything's going to change with the John Lewis voter registration bill. So this is one that we'll spend a little time towards the end of the show, and maybe you could talk about the show itself.
Right. What we are going to talk about tonight, we cannot get away from the state school district funding.
Right.
It's in every town. It's in every school board meeting. It's on the cover of all these local papers. This is a big deal. We dove into it last time with Dawn Fantasia in Assembly, and this is probably going to be touched on a couple of times. We're going to talk about this again tonight. This is very important. And as Jack already said, we're going to talk about the John Lewis voter bill. And this is kind of came as a surprise to us because this was voted on the day that the sanctuary state bills. We sat through all that on March 23rd. It was a rainy day. We were at a rally outside. We came in, we listened to the roll call, everything that went on, and I'm ready to click off and, this comes up. I was a little surprised about that.
Yeah.
So this is going to be talked about because we can't talk enough probably about the whole voter ID situation. So I think I'm going to introduce our guest because she knows about all of these things. Could you bring Vicky out? Bring her out of the green room.
Hi there, Connie. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Vicky.
How are you?
So thanks for joining us. I just want to ask you to give us a very quick bio. What got you into Assembly? What's LD 13? What are your towns? And what's kind of the hottest thing on the floor this week?
So thank you. Welcome to Middletown, New Jersey. This is where my legislative office is. I'm honored to represent 16 beautiful towns in Monmouth County. We commonly refer to as like the Bay Shore. It's like where Sandy Hook is kind of next to. We go down to Monmouth Beach, West Long Branch, Oceanport, Monmouth Beach. Oceanport's exciting because that's where the new Netflix studios are being built. So I have that. I also have a beautiful racetrack in our district that we love to go and support, Monmouth Park, and they had a great grand opening this weekend. So I would encourage everyone to go out there. And then like where I live, Homedale and Marlborough out there in Aberdeen, it's kind of this mixture, but I live on the side of Homedale that has a lot of farmland still that I know my local officials are desperately trying to protect from overdevelopment. Like Middletown too. I mean, huge town of Middletown, and that mayor and council have been working tirelessly to prevent it from overdevelopment. And all the way to like Rumson, Little Silver, that area. It's a beautiful, beautiful district. Monmouth County is beautiful, and it's also very Republican. So I think that's why we're able to keep it as beautiful as it is.
No doubt.
Where we are, Camden County is very blue in our neck of the woods. But
so the hot topic, go ahead.
The hot topic. Yesterday I actually went down. I did not have a committee meeting in Trenton, but I did go down and visit because a few of my constituents were down there. There was a hearing. The Senate Labor Committee had a hearing on this new independent contractor rule. The Department of Labor has introduced, they introduced and now have adopted a new rule. It's a carryover from the Murphy administration, which does put in place a pretty strict rule as to whether or not you're operating as an independent contractor rule. And the goal of that rule by most critics is that it will wrongfully convert people who have been operating. And we have I think the number is 1.5 million people in New Jersey operate as an independent contractor. And the fear is that they are going to have these people be subject to audits lengthy audits and maybe be deemed employees of these companies for which they work in an independent contractor role. So that is a big topic. I went down there to support my constituents. I also went there to speak to the union folks who are in favor of this rule, because look, if there's bad things happening in that field that requires some attention, then the Department of Labor should do something about that. But instead, they're looking to, and they have put in place a rule that's overreaching. And I think it's going to capture way too many people that do depend and hurt companies by having all these people be wrongfully deemed employees. And so we're trying to fight back against that. And my running mates, Jerry Schaffenberger and Declan Scanlon, we have what we call concurrent resolutions in place that would invalidate that rule. It's commonly referred to as a legislative veto. It's not effectively that, but the legislature has this power to invalidate a rule adopted by the executive branch, which happened here in the Department of Labor, by saying it's contrary to the statutory intent, that we, the legislature, have not given that administrative agency the power to do what it did. And we have a bill in place that can effectively invalidate it. And both the Senate and the Assembly adopt it, then the rule is invalidated.
Right.
Wow. So if they're employees, then they will have the Social Security, Medicare, everything taken out of their paycheck.
Yeah, or
is that an underlying desire, a way to get more money into these programs that are suffering?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the goals.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I think the backlash will be, like, for instance, I have a client who works with Pfizer in a consulting capacity as an independent contractor. He's a professional, a doctor. And in this, I believe even in that situation, they would apply it to that person, and that person would then be deemed an employee of Pfizer. Now, Pfizer would have to pay all these taxes, and Pfizer might say, you know what, I'm not going to even deal with that. I'm not going to have that person in consulting capacity. I'm just going to take that work that I was having done here in an independent contractor capacity and give it to this other employee and overburden that employee. So again, when the other thing that were coming out in the budget here, we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the country right now. And I don't think we're pushing the economy along by putting in place a rule like this that is really anti-business.
It's going to strangle.
Yeah, many times these consultants come on board because they have a particular skill that is not found in the company anywhere.
Right.
So if they'll come in from, for 2 to 3 months or 4 months, the company doesn't want to hire them, and they don't want to be hired.
Right.
They are happy when they choose a line of work like that. They have a tremendous amount of freedom because they'll work 3 or 4 months. Usually they get paid more than regular employees. That's another minus. If he's forced to become, an employee, his salary is going to go down. Yeah. So there was almost 10,000 comments submitted in this administrative rulemaking process, and 99% of them were against it. The Department of Labor has pushed that aside as saying, well, they were all repetitive, so maybe it's not that much. It doesn't. Look, I haven't met one of the many different business makers, innovative people in this state that I represent that haven't told me that this is a job killer. This is not good for the economy. Look, if there's an issue we need to address in a specific sphere of industry, let's address that. And the legislature's happy to do it. Let's not one of the things is Uber, for instance. Uber, the ride sharing apps and all that. And the Department of Labor has been, engaged in enforcement against them from basically saying that all of these drivers that they have they're really employees. They're not independent contractors. And Uber and Lyft and all of them are pushing back on those enforcement actions. There's been some significant settlements reached between Uber and the Department of Labor on this. But if that's something you want to address, then let's address that legislatively. Let's not make sure like the working mom who wants to have a flexible schedule, or even me, like I'm a lawyer who has a husband who works at a company that has health insurance and everything else. I don't need to be an employee then of some other law firm at this point in time, because right now I'm a legislator, so I need flexibility with my schedule right now. No law firm. There's not many law firms that want to deal with the schedule of a legislator who is busy. So
being an independent contractor, we have contracts, but we act in that capacity, in a similar capacity, by doing different, work for different clients. That doesn't mean I'm an employee of all of my clients that I happen to provide legal services for. And that's the fear right now. And
Well, we know what's going to happen. I mean, California did this, and there were tremendous layoffs.
yep.
So,
Yeah.
so there should not be any surprise about what's going
And
to
I
happen.
think there was about 100 statutes passed to provide exemptions to various fears of the industries. And I'm sure a lot of lobbying that went around with that, a lot of campaign financing and fundraising to support those statutory exemptions. But that's what happened. Yeah. We don't have time here in New Jersey to be doing that. We got to focus on getting this economy working, focusing, as you said, Connie, about the state funding formula. I would love for someone to sit down and want to talk about that. Talk about the state health benefits plan that both our local and state and county workers throughout the state get, and it's a tremendously in financial straits. That's what we should focus on. We should focus on the fact that there's these whole, our municipalities are stretched way too thin. We have a lot of things that we already need to focus on. Let's try to make sure, and I said this, I subbed it on the labor committee last week. I said, I think we should have every purpose section of any statute that we adopt right now should identify whether or not it's going to make New Jersey more affordable. They say there's a lot of this talk about, we're going to do A, B, and C to make New Jersey more affordable. Well, I haven't seen it yet. We're not making New Jersey more affordable. And every time we go down there in Trenton, we kind of make it less affordable. Not we, my Republican friends, but like my friends on the other side of the aisle. They go through a lot of effort to pass laws that just make New Jersey less affordable. And that's why we have to really just, I believe, become way more focused on our job down there to make New Jersey more affordable.
Yeah.
Since we've been doing this little podcast, we're in episode 5, you're number 5. And I went and I was going to detail it at the end if we have time, but we came up with $522 million that we've uncovered just that Mikey has assigned since January in the topics we've addressed.
Yeah.
And we'll point out what those are. But $522 million has been added since January. So anyway, let's talking about money. This is a good segue into the school budgets.
Yeah, let's talk about the school funding formula, which is pretty old, isn't it? Didn't the formula go back? I don't know. Does it go back 20 years or something? I think it's pretty old.
It was during Governor Christie's term. A deal was reached with the legislature at that point to kind of deal with the issue with funding formula. They needed to address it. And the issue was there was many schools who were there was a lot of haves and have-nots, and the have-nots were not getting any school funding for several years. And it seemed to not be not fair. So this formula was developed, which no one can recite with any type of knowledge. Me sitting on a school board for 8 years, so anyway, long time. I can't tell you what it has something to do with enrollment. It has something to do with your, your socioeconomic picture. It has something to do about a lot of things, but it makes no sense. It seems like every year you don't get it. So in the town that I lived in, Homedale they would have said under S2 would have been a winner because we were not getting state funding for so long. So we would start getting it towards the end of that funding formula going out, like phasing out. And the people who were getting way too much for a long time would start phasing down and would give them this ability to do that. Well, in the middle of all that, we had COVID, and that was a killer for school districts all throughout the state. And so people were using their COVID funding to fund things our school got COVID funding. We knew it was very limited to something that was like a one-time, one-off, right? You don't want to, you get $150,000 to fund something. Well, you're going to have to you get it once. Next year, you're going to have to go to the taxpayers to get that $150,000.
Yeah, everybody knew ahead of time this was one time.
Yeah, the people who were starting to lose money in that funding formula, apparently rightfully so, started using that COVID money to fund that. And then now we have school districts throughout the state, and so many in my district and elsewhere, who never really got the benefit of that S2 formula. Were never receiving the funding that they were supposed to do, or they were in this boat of using all of this money that they got for COVID, and now they're like, oh wait, we're not getting it anymore. Who am I going to go to? the property taxpayer. And I believe it was totally drawn up to hurt towns like towns I represent, towns that have Republican representation. They don't get their fair share. Like the year that Middletown, a huge school, again, one of my biggest towns, they have 2 high schools in this town. Now, the year that they were about to receive, more in state funding, like they went from one year, they got a lot of funding. The next year, we're going to get that plus a lot more. The Department of Education came in and said, oh, wait, we're going to cap the amount that you're supposed to get. So they got less. That's not fair. There was a lot of things and games that went on with that. One of the first things I argue, first things I stood up on the floor to argue about was there was a bill to give $45 million to a pilot program for electric school buses. I stood up on the floor with an amendment to say, guys and gals, we should not be talking about this. Why isn't this money going to something like high impact tutoring? Why isn't it, we're in the throes of the end of COVID. We know there's a learning loss. And people used to be like, shh, don't say learning loss. Yeah, I said there is learning loss. You could see it. Yeah. Why aren't we doing something like that? And instead, $45 million went to an electric school bus at the end of COVID rather than to these purposes. And that's because they're so unfocused. And everyone wants to kick the can down the road and not solve this problem. And we're about, 4 or 6 weeks out of adopting a budget with yet again not fixing this funding formula and having states and schools all throughout the district cutting programs, cutting budgets, raising property taxes to cover it. It's a disaster.
Yeah, let me ask you about some of these school districts because, after all this, the reality on the ground, there are districts that are selling properties and raising taxes in Cherry Hill. We're $16 million short or something like that, so there's going to be a 7%. So in Toms River, they sold their administrative headquarters for $15 million, to try to make... This is because whatever's going on with this formula did not do it for Toms River. Lakewood Public Schools are trying to sell an elementary school. Jackson Township, they already sold their middle school property for $40 million. Asbury Park, they're discussing selling 2 buildings. Jersey City is looking at a 17% tax increase. Edison Township is 12%. Hoboken, there's a 27% approved that would increase. That's huge. This is huge. Montclair Schools, 23 to 25% effective school tax increase. Toms River, 22% over 2 years. What are these districts going to do? I mean, first of all, they're selling these properties, which gets them through this year, but it doesn't take care of subsequent years. And increases like this, even 22% is a lot of money for anyone. Even in Cherry Hill, a 7%, you've got a lot of people that either don't have kids in the schools, and everything is going up. Meanwhile, you've got this Stay New Jersey and all these little tricks going on where you get money back, but now you're going to be paying more in taxes. I mean, what's the way out of this mess?
Well, I think we have to, again, sit down with that budget and take a good pen to it and really start redrafting it and taking things that are budgeted for other less necessary items and put it back in these school districts. We have it, like you just said, have like if there's a sale of $1 million to infuse cash, they sell property, they get $1 million out of it. Where are they getting it next year? They still have to fund it next year. That's $1 million in that budget. And I don't know. One of the things I did a TikTok a little while ago about maybe we should bring these school budget decisions back to the voters. We used to vote on this budget in April.
Right.
And they moved it to they said, as long as you move your election to November, that's fine, but you have to stay within a 2% cap. Well, that promise has been blown through broken.
And our taxpayers just aren't really given the full scoop. They're told that the federal funding is pulled, when in fact it was temporary COVID funding that was never meant to go on and on. So of course this is done to paint a bad stroke. And then on top of that, free pre-K isn't free. free pre-K is coming out of the pocket. And that's going to double down in a couple years when that funding runs out. And they apparently use some of the COVID funding for that.
Yeah.
So free pre-K. In fact, that's one of the things that was added in, $118 million for the free pre-K.
Maybe Mr. Producer can put up that Cherry Hill newspaper clip. Have that available.
So this is our local town of Cherry Hill. In fact, Jack is from Cherry Hill.
I am.
Jack is a proud resident of Cherry Hill.
Right.
And, I'm walking down the street visiting my daughter, and, these papers, these local papers they throw on I pick it up, and front page, April 1st, 7.3% tax increase, $14 million down because of lack of funding, 72 teacher cuts, 72 positions killed, and then another $8 million that has to come from somewhere else. So the 72 teacher cuts, I guess, was $6 million.
Right.
So big numbers.
So what's maddening about this, if you remember in the lame duck last session, they allocated $200 million to upgrade the stadium in North Jersey. Mm-hmm. That was $200 million in tax credits. There was another $26 million that went to the World Cup for advertising and that sort of thing. This is, the priorities. I don't think they're serious about this.
I don't think so either. I really don't. Look, as a school board, one of the things I ran on is that you could see the priorities of that school board by looking at their budget. And that's how we operated in Homedale. We were very strict about our spending. I would talking about pre-K, I did bring up the pre-K issue to the legislators pushing that through desperately. Number one, you were putting people out of business, young, usually women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses who operate pre-K programs by doing this. That was number one. Number two, in a district like mine, our pre-K program, we ran it as an enterprise fund. So we would have people pay to go to pre-K in the Homedale School District. That's how we dealt with the fact that we got little to little state funding. And so we can keep running. And these are the ideas that you need to have. And obviously the people at the state level don't understand those are decisions being made at the local level. And that's a big problem. And voters need to be thinking about that. When you elect people, you should be electing people that have the experience to know what to do and how to ask these questions and how to articulate it. And if you've already worked at the local level, you see it. You see what all these mandates coming from DCA really mean and what they cost. So that when we're standing up on the floor in the legislature or we're at a committee meeting and a bill comes through that has another mandate, we could start pushing back against that because we know the impact. Sadly, there's too many people there that aren't, and they just spend like drunken sailors. The budget went up from Chris Christie, when his last term is a $34 billion budget, to today to $61 billion, 60.4 billion.
60 points. Yeah.
I'm anticipating to come. The 61 billion that will end up being presented to us on a June 30th platter.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's scary. And one of the best, I don't know if you both saw the Democratic debate when they were doing the primaries. There was a student who asked a question, and it was the best question and never asked again, sadly, by any of the commentators. I think it was the best question asked. A student came out and asked all those candidates seeking to get the Democratic nominee, if you continue down the trajectory of what Governor Murphy has done in the budget seasons, by the time you're finishing your first term as governor and be running for a re-election, the budget will be about $90 billion. What are you going to do to prevent that from happening?
Right.
And no one had an answer. And that should give everyone a clue as to, you don't have an answer to that, then how? Because the next question is, and if you don't have a plan, how are the rest of us going to live here? And how much more money can you take from my $1 that I have in my pocket all the time? Because I feel like if I make $1, you're taking $1.25 away from me. It's just, there's just no end. And we have to stop this.
Let's throw up one more clip because there's another parallel here. This is
Welcome back, Matt, to
Collingswood.
Bush in the Live Center. The Collingswood Board of Education just voted to close an elementary school. This was about an hour ago here. This is all because of a $3.3 million budget gap. So tonight, we've been watching that school board meeting that was happening. Garfield Elementary School, that's the one that's going to close at the end of this year. So some teachers will be laid off, and the 113 students, they're going to have to move to the 4 remaining schools. So parents complained about what this is going to do to the students and the services provided to them. A lot of public comment from parents and staff members. Here's just a.
Yep, it's happening too in my district.
This is my town. This is my town. This is Collingswood. And so they're closing a school down. And unlike your area, which is largely Republican, my town is completely not. So on one hand, you've got them very upset and in tears over this. On the other hand, they're all for no ICE, all for sanctuary state, all for no kings. And then we have the sad story of that going on. And they're not looking at the parallels. That we have 925 million, I think, a year. And I think that's modest in the education of illegal immigrants. Yeah. That is reaching into the pocket of these school boards. And yet they're pushing for no kings, no ICE, protect. And what they need to be realizing is, would they speak the same tune if they realized that it's coming from one pocket into the other? It's not coming from Murphy's pocket or Cheryl's. It's coming from yours and mine. And they're not putting that. We're going to connect the dots again at the end of the segment. We'll move on, but that's the first dot.
But it's a big step, and this podcast is a step in that direction. And all of us out there talking, connecting the dots needs to be done, because you're correct. And when Jerry and I meet with people in our district who are really, and rightfully, as upset as those parents in Collingsworth, they're upset here in Middletown. They were about to do a school closing. It turned out they got one vote less. It's not closing, but there's still a budget gap. Union Beach, the town is buying property at market value to do that. Homedale, my district, in 4 years, they have a budget gap. They're getting $1 million from the town. They're buying property. Like, it's insane. But
and yet,
we always say, who did you elect to do this?
And they added $375 million to the already approved budget for the schools in January. $375 million more. That's going cha-ching.
So while you have this this misery,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, while you have this misery going on in some of these school districts, at the other end of the spectrum, you have certain school districts like Newark, that's flush in cash, and there. We understand, anyhow, that there are trips to Las Vegas, trips to Honolulu, $2 million for food for staff over the year. Mm-hmm. Now, $2 million, that's money that could save, teaching positions in any number of these school districts here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a reality. They were screaming about, the last 3 years, we were screaming about a teacher shortage. And a lot of time and money and effort was putting in to help support that. And now we're cutting teaching staff because we can't afford it anymore.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Right. So when we were prepping for this, we talked to you. You said it really well. We were all part of this governor race, remember? Wasn't that long ago. And it was a very big deal that the Republicans made about the state being affordable. And like you said, the Democrats turned around and hijacked the term affordability, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just a word, and it's not being enacted. So they hijacked the word that everybody is concerned about, but we're not seeing that play out.
Yeah, there's a certain part of me that wants to, present a solution here to the audience, how to fix this funding issue. I think there's an attitude problem in Trenton with the Democrats. I don't think they really care. They're not serious about this.
Well,
the only solution that you alluded to is who you elect. People, the independent voters and Democrat voters, they need to see the light here. You cannot be sending these people back to Trenton. You have to send Republicans in to right this ship before it's too late. Because it's going to get to a point, a couple more cycles, and we're going to be buried in some, just buried with bad legislation.
So tell us about the John DeMaio bill. Isn't there a bill that...
Yes. So John DeMaio, our leader, has a bill that we've all signed on to as Republican Assembly members that will not only try to equalize the funding formula. It will also provide property tax relief. And so that's what we've been proposing. Now, if the State House and the Democrats in the State House were worried about good government, they would present that bill up for discussion, or take the bill and slap their names on it and push it forward. But they're not. And that's what the voters need to understand. They're not even willing to discuss how do we make New Jersey more affordable by starting first with education funding. How are we going to make sure that these kids are getting an education, the teachers aren't losing jobs, they're getting, healthcare is not out of control, you're not having to move out of your town because your property taxes have gone through the roof. What are we doing about that? That should be a priority, and it isn't, because no one would even give the John DeMaio bill a moment in the education committee. Vote no to it. But my God, put it up.
We've watched your sessions. As soon as you make an amendment to any bill, it's tabled, and then they vote on their bill.
So the John DeMaio. This bill, it was introduced last session, right?
Yes.
Now,
I don't want to sound like Jack. I don't mean to interrupt, but we do a lot of complaining and arguments, present arguments in the assembly, but we don't want to be presented as people who don't have ideas. We do. We want to solve these ideas. And about 10 years ago, that used to happen up till maybe 5 or 10 years ago. That's how things got done in Trenton. No matter who was whoever was in the governor's office or whoever was in the legislature, the parties used to work together. Now, and look, in this state, they all say it's Trump and we're the extreme party, and we're not in control in the State House. So you can't say that about me. It's the Democratic Party that is being ruled by its most extreme. And quite honestly, I'm afraid for that party. I would rather have the party of the Democrats from 10 years ago than what we're seeing now, because what we're seeing now doesn't result in us being able to sit down and talk rationally about these type of ways in which we could work together and solve problems for New Jersey. We are being ruled by an extreme, and it's getting worse, an extreme angle from their side of the party. And I wish and I pray that the Democrats would stand up against that part of their wing of their party and start legislating, start operating like they used to, closer to the middle, because right now they're listening way too much to that extreme end of their party, and they got to stop.
So this bill, which represents a solution, right, to the school funding issue, can't even get onto the floor without going through Craig Coughlin and Lou Greenwald, right? So these two guys are sort of blocking any of the Republican solutions. So these bills sort of die on the vine. They never see the light of day. And this is a disservice to the citizens of New Jersey. This is horrible. And the only bills that really get put forward are Democrat bills, which don't really fix anything. They just make things worse. Yeah. So there's, I don't know. It seems, I know this is all part of the rules of the chamber, but people need to understand the frustration of the Republican Party, because we can't get any of the bills out onto the floor and into committee because these two guys are blocking it. It stops right at that door with Coughlin and Greenwald.
Yeah, look, we're up for election every 2 years and the second every 4. So next time, the voters of New Jersey, do they like paying these high property tax bills? Do you like paying high auto insurance bills? Do you like paying high electric bills? I guess then continue to vote Democratic. But if you want to start doing something that will make sure that your family has a future in New Jersey, that your parents can still live in New Jersey, that you personally can still live in New Jersey and maybe invest some money in your future, then try the Republican Party on for size. Because right now, I don't understand how that's why we're in this position we are right now in New Jersey, by being the least business friendly state, by having the most highest property taxes in the country, higher than California. And we're spending all of this money paying all these taxes, and we continue to elect the same people. What do you think is going to happen?
Every town hall comes up with someone asking about property taxes. Our Congressman Don Norcross was at a town hall recently, and of course, someone raises their hand about property taxes. Assemblyman Bill Moen was there, and his answer was, well, that's a very good question. You should present this to your municipality.
Yeah,
that was the
it's
answer.
a state issue.
And so they're not given a true feedback. But again, these are the same people that are protecting the illegal aliens. Here's another one: the affordability thing and the connect the dots. Healthcare costs. They're saying the budget. One of the issues is healthcare. Well, it came out with Garden State Initiative. 1 in 5 New Jerseyans are on Medicaid. It's also true that 1 of 10 New Jerseyans are illegal immigrants.
Right.
There's some dots to be connected there. I mean, they're coming into the state and they need these services. The children, you have the funding formula weighted heavily for English language learning. Yeah. Well, these children of the immigrants need those services. So that weight is going to the Abbott schools, as we've talked about. Camden. We found out the Abbott school, by the way, is from a student in Camden. Yeah. So the whole, they're not connecting the dots, and I'm hoping that you and Jack and I and Jerry and everyone you're talking to can help connect them. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, wasn't there? Did you mention 7 school districts take up 10% of the state budget or something, or 12 was it?
Yes. So remember, let's go back. It's a $60 billion budget, and 10% of that, I believe it's 10. Okay. 10% of that budget, or set, it's between 7 and 10%, but I think it's 10% of that budget goes to 7 school districts.
7 schools
in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know. So maybe we focus on that, those 7 school districts, and try to peel off some of that money and give it to these other school districts. You could solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Well, not really. One of those 7 is Camden, and they're in a $91 million deficit this year.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Camden, get a load of this. Camden is run by the state. They want local control of their school board. Since 2013, the state of New Jersey is their superintendent, and they are $91 million deficit, and they're one of the Abbott schools. And
good question.
Yeah, I mean,
how does the state run it? And it's 90.
What happens when we put the state in charge of something? Do they ever come out on the other side of we're saving money?
Yeah.
There's some relief. No.
It never gets better.
No, it doesn't. And it's sad because you know what? We just spent 25 minutes talking about money, which of course as a good Republican is very important to me, and how we could solve these problems. But you know what we're not talking about? How are we improving the quality of the education for these students who need it most? What are we doing to make education more meaningful for these students? What's one of the reasons I ran? It was so exciting when I first ran for the Board of Ed, when my daughter, who's now a junior in high school, she was just a baby. She was just born. I used to live in Nutley, and they wanted me to run that year that I was pregnant with my daughter. And these were during the April elections, and she was born in April. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I ran the following year. As a board member, it was a really exciting time because everyone was talking about innovation in education. How are we going to enhance the education? We were talking about the fact that the type of education kids needed then, we couldn't even imagine for what kind of job in the future, because so much was going to change. And look where we are, AI. No one in the early 2000s were educating about AI, but we had, so what they did say was, but look, we have to make sure these kids are getting a quality education in math and science, because we believe that would set up kids for the best likelihood of success in their future. And Vicky, math and science needed to be a priority. And there was huge priority, money, funding, programming, to try to push that in to make it accessible to everyone. No one is talking about that anymore. 17 years later, no one's talking about that anymore.
We went to the Board of Education meeting in Trenton just last Wednesday. Yeah. The open comment for Board of Education, they're very proud about how many students they're graduating. Nary a word about how the basic skills are so poor in these top schools, Abbott schools. They talked about absenteeism as an issue. Okay, so the students are absentee. The basic skills are suffering, but they're very proud of how many are graduating.
Yeah, but their graduation rate is also is a falsehood, because
it is. Yeah,
the standard for what's considered to be, the absentee rate has changed. So a kid could miss like a half a year of school and still not have been, have a chronic absenteeism issue. So if a kid misses a half a year of school, how are they graduating? There's no standards applied anymore. I've sat there where they've lowered standards by bills in the legislature, and I'm like, what are we doing? Stop this. You have to stop. Think about these kids as if they were your own kids. You want the best for them. Where's that? I don't see evidence of that at all when we talk like this. I just don't.
So I would tell these school districts at this point, if you want to fix this whole problem, you need to get Democrats out. The next time you get into that voting booth, you need to elect Republicans. And I'm asking independents and the Democrats to make that switch when you get in the booth. That's the only way we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
Because the Democrats, they're just not going to do it. They broke it, and they're just going to keep breaking it.
Hate to do this, but speaking of voting, we're going to flip and talk about voting. We have about, we're moving along here, so.
Yeah, so the...
one thing to you, this, Jack, and then it will help, because it deals with elections. When I when I first got into the legislature 2 terms ago, it was at a point where we had, I think, 34 or 36 Republicans out of the 4. So we need 41 is a majority. So when we got that close, and we had the most women too in the legislature at that point in time, that's when it was like we were going back to reasonableness. We were going back to working together. They needed us on a lot of votes. Now that we're down in the low 20s, they don't need us, and they're acting like it. So that's why it is really important. That's what happened in 2 voting cycles. We went from having this almost a majority to now, Watergate numbers. So that's why it's important that voting needs to be safe, secure. People need to trust it. And so I'm sure that hopefully that transitions nicely to what you're about to talk about. But I don't know, maybe not.
This is the John Lewis voter registration bill. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, John D. Lewis. It's a bill that was drafted to again create division. Yeah. I believe there was a lot of talk about how there's voter intimidation, and we needed this bill, which is creating an entity within the Department of Treasury to look at voting patterns, to look at what's going on, and issue reports that would make sure that we didn't have voter intimidation going on in the state of New Jersey.
So this is sort of a false. I mean, the last gubernatorial election had more voters than in the history of the all elections back to the 60s. Far more. In fact, there were so many more. It's sort of suspect where all these people came from, because through the years there's been a fluctuation of maybe when you add all the votes from election to election, it's about 200,000 up or down from election to election. There were 700,000 more people that voted in this election that came out of nowhere, of which, by the way, Mikey Sherrill got 500,000 of those votes.
Yeah.
So the numbers are a little wacky here, but nobody's being intimidated, that's for sure.
Correct. So yeah, that's what I questioned the people. Like, they had a lineup of all these women from all these different groups talking about voter intimidation and how, it was like zombies. They were all talking from the same script in a very strange way with a very monotone vote, and talking about how democracy is at stake, and it's the end of democracy. I was like, I wanted to snap them and say, wake up. Where is there evidence of voter intimidation in the state of New Jersey? The Attorney General's office has lawyers at all the counties there to represent anyone who goes to try to vote, is prevented from voting. They could go down, get a free lawyer to go to the judge, and the judge will issue an order if you could show that you lived where you're saying you lived.
All right, so we have a clip of Mike in Ganamort, and I just took a piece of it here.
I can't watch myself, so.
And this is like a laundry list of what's included in that bill. So
did a good job.
Mr. Producer, maybe you can put that up.
Judges in New Jersey would be able to overturn election results, redraw district boundaries, change the dates of elections, increase the size of a town council or other governing body, change the deadline for returning ballots, change the method of an election, such as ranked choice voting, change the length of someone's term in office. In other words, totally reinvent major election processes. And on top of all of that, for good measure, it outright bans voter
ID.
Yeah.
Or it was cut off. Voter ID.
Yeah. So this is a major change in voting. If we go to ranked choice voting, that will be the end of anybody's understanding of how voting takes place, because it's a complicated process.
And we can
And
thank,
I think
we can thank Andy Kim and his gang for all of this. This is what I remind people daily.
So how did he did he introduce it on the federal level? Is that
No, it just in terms of like getting rid of the party line, it's that whole group of people who want to say we're not going to be ruled by the party bosses. They're destroying the Democratic and Republican Party so that they can get control of these seats. So that's what this is about.
Okay.
And this is what I say, this is why the Democratic Party in our state of New Jersey is being ruled by its most extreme members right now, and they got to stop.
Yeah. So, all right, this topic I think we have to spend more time on, maybe on a separate podcast, because I think we're running down the clock here for this segment.
But that was a good description. I mean, he just described that pretty well. And the other point worth noting is that you said this came up from like a late Friday afternoon, then suddenly you're voting on it on Monday. Is this the way things go all the time? You're given like...
Yes.
Yeah, the other tactic that the Democrats are putting into these bills, in the voter privacy bill for the sanctuary state, if the data is shared with the police force and ICE, that perpetrator can sue the state of New Jersey.
I mean, they're not friends of law enforcement, so...
No. Now, with this bill, if somebody feels as though their voting rights has been violated, this bill will allow them to sue the state of New Jersey as well. So it's opening up the state to liability, in either one of these cases. But that seems to be a tactic now that they're, putting into these bills, is that if somebody's a victim, they can sue.
Yeah, look, I like, as Mike, articulated throughout in a wonderful way, the whole laundry list demonstrates every single which way in which that statute violates the Constitution. We do not have the power by legislation to give away the rights only given to the legislature to do. And that has to do with elections. So it can't be done by statute. It has to be done by Constitution. It will never happen. Yeah. But and like I said, I stood up against, I asked for a simple, vote on 80-20 issue, voter ID, and they voted against it. So the voters need to know, both Republican, Democratic, and independent voters, next time that they're up for election, I'll make sure that I'll do everything I can to articulate that the Democrats voted against voter ID, despite the fact you, the voters, want it.
Yeah. And we're going to be taking a break soon. I just want to tell you, came up on my phone today, there's a new A4960 to vote by phone in New Jersey.
Nice.
That's a new thing. So that's adding to this.
Yeah.
Vote by phone. Okay, so we'll go ahead and take a break.
Yeah, so...
or no?
So I think we're going to say goodbye to Vicky.
Oh, okay.
So we're out of time here.
Well,
so
it's been great. Thank you for doing this. It's an important public service that you're providing, and I can't thank you enough. And I appreciate you allowing me to share some time with you today.
Oh,
we appreciate you taking the time. We know how busy you are fighting for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. Okay. Bye-bye.
America's Pulse Network. The mainstream media is bought and paid for. The truth is twisted to fit their agenda. But America is waking up. Because podcasts are the future for trusted media. Welcome to the America's Pulse Network. It is a network built by patriots that upholds the Constitution. But America's Pulse Network stands for God, truth, and the America First movement. There is no corporate propaganda, no government spin, just real news, real talk, and real voices fighting for faith, freedom, and the future of this great nation with common sense. Here are some of America's Pulse Network podcasts. Alexandra Levine Live, hosted by Alexandra Levine. Jersey Shore Podcast, hosted by Damon Galdo. The Conservative Corner, hosted by Seth Eisenberg. The New Jersey Statehouse Watch, hosted by Jack Brangan and Constance Ditzel. APN's The Pulse is moderated by either Alexandra, Damon, Elena, or Seth. Also tune into America's Pulse Network on the following social media platforms: join the revolution, because the pulse of America beats for God and country. America's Pulse Network is for faith, family, freedom, and truth.
Okay, so we are back. We have a few minutes here. I think we didn't get nearly enough time to talk about the John Lewis bill. We really need to dig into that because we started the show with some of the changes that have taken place since Mikey Sherrill came into office. And, you go down this list, and now the whole voting process is going to change. And the power is going to shift from the local county Board of Elections to a brand new department that's going to be in the Department of Treasury that's going to be created, yet another department which this government can ill afford. This is just startup is going to be almost $3 million, to get that department started. This is not a department that's going to stay small.
No,
so year
no.
after year, this is going to be another drain on this budget. And I really think we're at a part. Keep in mind, there's based on the report from Paul Kinitra, there's 1 million people that have come into the state of New Jersey that are illegal aliens. They don't arrive here with their Blue Cross and Blue Shield card,
Right,
or their
right.
Aetna Medical or Delta Dental. They arrive with nothing.
Yeah.
So I think we're starting to feel the strain of these 1 million people that were unaccounted for.
And Paul is updating that report. We're going to get an update in another month.
Yeah, this is.
But we're building more infrastructure, like he said. So you got that John Lewis bill. So that adds what? $2.5 million.
Right.
Then in the K through 12 that Mikey added this year, $375 million for K through 12, plus another $118 million for pre-K. We talked in another show about the Department of Health expanding vaccine access in their database. $4 million there to build a brand, to perpetrate that infrastructure. And then you have this $22.5 million for Reproductive Health Access Fund, which Murphy started in December. $22.5 million for 26. Mikey is continuing that for 2027, another $22.5 million.
Yeah.
It's just that the money keeps layering on, and that's a real good segue. There's a big bill this week. We got to let folks know this new bill, 2260, S2260, A2218. It's in committee voting this week. It would create criminal and legal protection for abortion providers, even when those minors might be brought across state lines without parental consent, and doctors who offer services related to gender dysphoria. Our concern is we went to this New Jersey Coalition for Human Trafficking, and we found that human trafficking is very big at large sporting events. We have a big sporting event coming up with the World Cup.
Right.
So now we have this new law for the sanctuary state. We have this new law here that's going to make it very difficult to prosecute people who are doing this, coming across our border. We are going to be on the map for human trafficking. I'm sorry. It's a very sad statement. I want to urge you to vote against it. I'm going to tell you just where to go. NewJerseyFamilyPolicy.org, NJFPC.org. Learn all about it. Get on there and urge your senator and your assemblyman to vote no.
Okay.
NJFPC.org, family policy.
So we're getting the signal from Mr. Producer here. We have upcoming guests. We just had Vicky here, so on May 26th, we're going to have Brian Brangan. Brian is from LD 26. I'm not exactly sure where that is, but I'm sure it's close by. Mm-hmm. He is another advocate for the Republicans. Chris Russell, apparently he was, a lot of people know him. I've never met him, but he was a consultant to Jack Ciattarelli, and so I want to know what happened.
And also, in general, just how these campaigns work.
Yeah.
We want to talk about that one specifically, but in general, a lot of people would love to hear how this behind the scenes.
Right.
works.
And then on June 23rd, Audrey Lane, that'll be a discussion about, everything that we talked about tonight with Vicky boils down to the budget and money. And Audrey Lane can help us understand whether we're in good shape or really bad shape from a budgetary standpoint.
Right.
So I think that wraps it up for this podcast.
I think it does. We could have gone into so many more things on that voter bill and the budget. Look at your local papers. A lot of it's in there about the budget. Keep an eye on them. Those little local papers are sharing an awful lot of information.
Yeah. So thank you all very much for tuning in. And on May 26th, Brian Brangan, and we'll see everybody then.
Good night. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on the New Jersey Statehouse Watch. Join Jack Brangan and Constance Ditzel every second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Watch the show live at njstatehousewatch.com or listen anytime. Download the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time on the New Jersey Statehouse Watch.